Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Mirror's Edge Catalyst. So we're trying to power through the main story and probably not going to do much after we finish the main story. Um, we're going to the Shard, which is the tallest building by far in the city, and I wonder, since the last main story quest had us outside climbing towers and doing some fairly difficult parkouring and being able to fall to our death quite a few times. I wonder if inside the shard it's going to be more like the museum run, where it's more inside the building and uh, fighting Krugersek. I almost wouldn't be upset if actually it was more just an arena fight against Kruger himself, and there really was no um, Krugersek that we have to fight. I also wouldn't be upset if it was just a leisurely climb to the top of the shard without any kind of time mechanic or pressure. So plastic and Aileen Mara, I think, is who they're talking about there. They referred to her as Aileen, um, but now they're referring to her as Dr. Moreira. Have finalized the reflection virus. With it, you'll be able to destroy Kruger's reflection project and save Icarus, Dr. Moreira, and millions of other citizens in Glass from emotional enslavement. Go to the Plastics hideout and pick up the virus. Dr. Moreira and Plastic will know what the next steps are. I think it is fair to say that commercials and what commercials certainly have become, even in modern time, are effectively emotional enslavement. You could also certainly say things like Facebook and Reddit and sites like that that give you an emotional high um, when you engage with them can be a form of emotional enslavement. It's very hard to break yourself free, if not near impossible to break yourself free, particularly in a corporatocracy like this dystopian future. I've been calling it a totalitarian corporate. Uh, I've been calling it a totalitarian dictatorship, and in a lot of ways, Kruger seems to be creating that, but really, it officially is more of a corporatocracy, where corporations run the governments. Uh, Not that those two are exclusive terms, uh, but yeah, even in the real world, you every single commercial that ever exists is trying to emotionally manipulate people, and there has always been heavy pressure to make it difficult or illegal to block out ads. Like you even hear nowadays, it's like ad blockers is the same as piracy. Ad blockers are should be made illegal. Um, like, but what advertisements are at their core, they are trying to play on your basest desires possible to make you want something that you didn't want before you saw that ad and spend money to get those things. And the only way you get money is effectively engaging in a capitalist system of being an employee or inheriting the money or winning the money, which very rarely is that the way money is gained. Um, there are, of course, basic needs: food, water. Arguably, clothing is a basic need. There is some level of protection from the sun and other dangers, but high fashion clothing isn't really needed. Like brand name clothing isn't needed. You need water. You don't need bottled water. You need food. You don't need uh, gold leaf $1,000 a plate meals. You do need housing, some place to keep you housed and such, but you don't need $1 million mansion. Uh, and then there are higher level emotional needs that are much more difficult to define or fulfill, but many fulfill those often by donating to churches and religious groups or just doing something that they feel benefits society. A lot of people, artists, feel satisfy those higher level emotional needs, certainly by creating art and giving back to society in that way. Um, uh, but if there were systems, and this is kind of a great example of a society, Glass City is a great example of a society that seems like it has enough automation and enough resources amongst its dwindling population as people are being snuck away and killed. It really feels like it would be a prime example of a society that could introduce a universal basic income concept, enough something where every citizen is given a certain amount of credits, even if those credits are only applicable to certain categories of things. If you had, say, 100 meals a month uh, worth of credits for food as part of a universal basic income, then you don't need to then make meals cost regular dollars and make people work and make decisions between using dollars for food or clothing or housing. Um, if you have 1 credit a month for housing and or for like a class 1 housing, which would be like the basic level of housing, but then you could potentially work extra to get a class 2 housing, which is a little bit more spacious and a little bit fancier. That's where a universal basic income and the phrase basic comes into that, is that you could get the basic needs met while not living a particularly great life if you so choose, or you could then choose to sell your time, your effort, your life a span, because actually exerting yourself does reduce your lifespan to get a better quality of life in the shorter run. And even that gamble should be reevaluated. Um, Honestly, even in first world countries in 2022, there's a lot of countries that could introduce the beginnings of a universal basic income, uh, basic health care being another thing to also certainly consider in that. Um, but this game is so built around the high caste, the low caste, the mid caste system, and having a system and having people actually say high caste, low caste, and mid caste and know that that's the case. It's not open to evolution. It's not open to change as a society, um, because the oligarchs, the high caste, the rich people have control and they don't want to give up any beginning of that control. And eventually that will just lead to revolution, and that's what we're about to hit. Uh, Anyways, that's a long rant. It seems like every episode I start with a long rant. It's questionable how this turns a uh, into a prequel.
Don't encourage him.
I was sleeping.
Whatever keeps him busy. Is it ready?
Of course it is. Didn't we say so?
There's a console in the main control chamber in the shard. Upload the virus there. It'll permanently corrupt the carrier signal and cause the reflection nanites to go inert.
You just need to get to the top. The rest will take care of itself. More or less.
Simple, right?
Right.
It'll be the greatest run ever.
If I live. Well, there's no time like the present. Any last advice?
Don't die.
Awkward half hug.
This is our one chance to nip reflection in the bud. So, go on, girl. Save us all.
And again, Aileen should have just been Noah. So this whole time, for the past 4 story missions, the shard has still just been on fire, smoking. For as many missions that come out of this area, there needs to be that many different exits, which it would have been probably smarter if the layer was just used as the start point, as a central point on the map, instead of this hub, which is more away from that central point in the corner. Seems like we are going to just go to Zephyr Station. But yeah. There could have been more pathways that would have just been smashed out or destroyed or opened up, instead of there just being this exit and this exit. Yeah. We're still in a weird position where Kruger could come out somehow in the storyline to be the good guy. We're still probably going to run into...
We've got a train prepped and ready for you, Faith. Head to the Zephyr Transit Hub and get on board somehow.
I'll drive it.
We also disabled the safety override system, so it should be a smooth ride all the way to the Shard.
These little guys never did anything. Like, really is just a great example of something that didn't need to exist. Like, somebody in some meeting said, how do we keep all these windows clean? Let's make a robot that shows the windows are being cleaned. It may have even been a case that originally they were going to have just AI non-playable characters cleaning windows, and you would just see them occasionally standing around washing windows. But that they couldn't render that with the graphics engine, so they changed it to something smaller and more simplistic, like a robot. Either way, it's just absolutely a waste of time for that to exist. I'm interested in seeing if we end up on an actual train or tram. We have dots everywhere pointing us in different directions, making it fairly difficult to know which way to go. Do I not have it marked? Yeah, we do have these kinds of characters standing around, but they don't have enough face models, or probably not even enough outfit models for more NPCs. But that definitely was a gimmick. It's an interesting idea. Certainly, if outside of caves in Skyrim, you would occasionally just see somebody standing around, that would be interesting. Of course, the next step there would be, how wouldn't you like want to be able to interact with them in some way? Like, talk to them, attack them, trade with them. Like, anything at all. Occasionally they'll say hi to you if you walk by, but mostly they just stand there. They seem not afraid of you, or even particularly interested. We've run through this section far too many times. This is a really bad section too, and that it's just boring. And then it takes you to what is one of the worst transition spots in the entire game, because if you get it wrong, you have to slowly climb down. If you get it right, you can slide down. If you jump, you die, which I proved. And interesting. A few episodes ago, I said there should be manhole tunnels that you would use to fast travel, and you'd have to potentially open a manhole to fast travel instead of just being able to do it on the map. But then there could be enough of them that wouldn't be too big of a deal. But originally you would have to do like a just run sequence, a mostly straight, you have a minute to do this race and it takes you 55 seconds to do it perfectly. So you can only stumble on a jump or miss a jump once or twice. Something like that once to then let you fast travel from point A to point B would be nice. And so I mused on that and thought, oh, that would have been a cool idea, and it certainly would have helped with the map to explain how you are fast traveling and such. But I never thought I'd actually see a sewer grate. And while this is a hatch, not a sewer grate, that is exactly what it is. This is it. You have the virus. You know where you need to go, which is to the very top of the tallest building in glass. What awaits you there remains to be seen. Will Kruger be there? Your sister? Will the virus work? Reflection must be stopped, and you've decided to risk everything to do it. For your friends, for all the employees out there who aren't even aware of the danger it poses, and for Noah. What would be funny is if you finished this story of this game, and then you woke up and realized it was just a simulation, that you were still in prison and they were running a simulation on you, or you were in the lair with Noah and they were running a simulation to train you, and then that would be a way certainly to connect it to the original Mirror's Edge if it was just a dream, but that'd be a fairly cheesy way to do it. Generic fade to bright white because they didn't want to animate a hatch opening. I don't know if they even want to animate you on a train.
According to the latest tally, almost 500,000 employees have already signed up for reflection.
See, there was a whole sequence where you had to duck down, and I guess I am in control here.
It'll mess a lot of things up if we don't stop it, not the least the host themselves. Once Kruger starts experimenting with the emotional influence parameters on a mass scale, all bets are off.
Okay.
We won't get to see it.
No, it's not plastic. Glass is just the testing bed. If reflection is successful here, the conglomerate will make it mandatory for all employees in Cascadia. It will eradicate what little personal freedom there is left.
So, obviously they had trouble programming anything interesting there. So they put you in control and just let you get knocked down 3 times.
What Plastic is saying is that she's managed to access a bunch of news drones.
I'll be able to follow you all the way up. And I can use them to hack services in the building. Elevators and stuff.
Looks like they're evacuating.
Only a few. They still seem to think that the damage can be repaired. Stay on the move, Faith, but watch out for damaged areas. The glass there might be brittle enough to break under your weight.
The fact that some glass is breakable but very little is weird. And it seems like it's mostly just shadow people that are running, unless they are Kruger-sec. They didn't put any textures on the characters. The weirdness here is if they can run, and you are supposed to just be seeing the panic here of what looks like basically a mall. Like, this feels like that should have been when the mall got exploded.
And here we go.
So now,
Not.
They were already at high alert following the bombing. They'd shoot at anything.
what can I expect at the top?
Expect the control chamber to have some sort of security in place.
Reflections
You've been
again?
able to find its parameters, so you should assume the worst.
Okay. So these are just going to go up, and then we're going to have to jump from elevator to elevator. Game not making that fairly obvious enough. I just clipped through a wall.
It doesn't work like that, Icarus. The virus will corrupt the carrier signal, which will disable the nanites, but they will still remain inside you.
It's chilly up here.
go down as well, but that's not a serious problem below 18,000 feet. And you won't go that high.
What if they shut down the reflection carrier signal before I get there?
From what we can see, they still expect the building to remain intact. Some have evacuated, but many remain.
May just be that they don't care about people too.
Wrong, Plastic.
Not a chance. I've done the calculations twice.
Plastic, have you ever been wrong?
No.
Sky City being its own separate labeled area, I guess.
There's a lot of interference from the area you're entering, Faith. Expect comms to go down. Just keep going and we'll reconnect once you're through.
Here you have a yellow ladder just to point you in the right direction, I guess. So you look upward. Of course, I don't know why that worked. Like, seriously, a swing to a horizontal swing to another swing. We've never done anything like that. That really didn't feel like that should have worked at all. And I question if that means this is a one-way trip. And more bots. We never did get an explanation as far as what these sectors and all of this means. And so my hope is that that is going to be about it. As far as conflicts, is that we'll run into hallways with just a couple of people.
Continue upward. See if you can find an attachment point.
Interesting. Smashing a glass door.
Fan.
You should be able to ride what the blades are. Use command to attach to it and just...
And here they have the tilted glass so you don't jump off the ledge. Alright. This is probably something that would have been better as a cutscene than... Yeah, and it basically is a cutscene. I feel like the original Mirror's Edge had more sections like that where there are weird cutscenes. Wow. Is this because the building is tilted, or do they like to just have places where workmen could fall to their death? I don't get the idea of a big fan being in the building anyways. If you were using that to gain electricity, that would be fairly dangerous, and if you're doing it to create wind, it's far too slow. It may very well just be for visual aesthetic. These poor guys are gonna fall a long way to their death. Yeah. But I guess they were always falling to their death, so it's a fairly, like, brutal game. Like,
Go through one of the fans.
Faith
I'll shut it down.
could have been a pacifist
Hurry.
as a character, but really is not much of a chance of believing that.
Firewalls are a joke. My sister could hack through them, and she's even more stupid than Kuma.
Plastic talks about her sister before, which feels like they're having her say that to either reuse dialogue that she may have already said, or
I lost a drone. You must have been hit by falling debris. This section is not stable, Faith.
like that they probably just want to remind you about the sister. Yep, there's the drone. And now we have glowing orange pipes, which, if they were going to do that, it's very late in the game to introduce yet another art style and texture style. Oops, that was not where I was supposed to jump.
Your firewalls are a joke.
This is a
Hack through them.
problem
More stupid than Kuma.
in that, like, let's see if we can get hit by the drone. It's definitely a problem with even the first game that you want to look cool, you want to feel cool by the end of the game, you want to be this expert parkourer, and odds are just going to be that that's not really going to be the case. Like, this is not a game that really lets you get better at parkouring as much as it just constantly presents new challenges, and then you're going to struggle through them.
My sister could hack through them, and she's even more stupid than Kuma.
There's a feeling here, not unlike what a bad teacher might do in school. Like, a bad teacher is going to give you no actual education and just test you and then let you fail on the test, or even just let you pass the test and grade you far too nicely for what you actually proved that you knew. Whereas a good teacher will test you, use the test to learn what she needs to reinforce as far as education, and then test you again to make sure you've actually learned it. That's not the case here. All I have to do is luck out. And in this case, this scenario in particular, luck out is kind of a great example, because you're just not going to be able to know where these pieces drop until you've seen it once. So it's 100% luck or 100% repetition, and that does not really work for this kind of game. I'm having a real hard time even seeing, like, what is climbable versus what is not. And there I almost died again. I can't 100% hate just climbing though. We are having a leisurely experience on the climb. We're not having to... Why is that not letting me go through it? I don't know. We're not having to fight a bunch of people. We're not having to do anything super crazy. The reveal here.
Great. There's an elevator on the other side you can use.
This is a really ridiculous amount of plants and stuff really, really high up. And this is the level of, like, opulence that I would have expected to see in this world, the City of Glass. I wouldn't be surprised if this whole atrium itself was built specifically for your sister by Kruger as a way of helping her breathe better and being away from the smog that the city could have been full of.
That's too bad. city could use a bit more of this.
Yeah, even the game is saying we should have put more trees in the world design. But if you were going to put the idea that there was a lot of pollution and smog in Glass City, then you can't present a city that is like perfectly white and clean and the sky that's perfectly blue. In fact, if you did go with smog, then you could have gone with acid rain, and there could have been entire sequences in the story mode where you had to get out of the acid rain because it was hurting you. How am I supposed to jump here? There's never been a case where we could jump outside, jump from one side of a air vent to another section. So how am I supposed to do this? I don't have any way to grab a ledge. It just kind of worked when I pointed in a direction. So you have to just kind of inch your way towards it. I don't know if I want to even bother with a... What? That was just had me floating in the air. That was so glitched. Yeah. They're hiding all the bugs that they didn't fix in this game at the end. But every time you're in an environment like this, you have to kind of look up and try and figure out where the next place to go is. And that's going to take some time. Time you may not actually have. Jumping backwards and forwards here. Trying to find the right way. None of this will checkpoint you anywhere, so...
Through. There's some serious wreckage here.
It would have probably made a lot of sense to have more bombed out buildings. Like, you could have had the middle of the game happen where Black November bombed out half of the city, and then half of the locations you could have seen and already visited would have had different paths that you could take. And they are pretty much forgetting about Black November as a concern. Like, at best, Black November and Rebecca will play some role as a potential bad guy in the sequel, and that's it.
I just wanted you to know why I've stayed away lately. There's someone looking for me, and I can't let him find me. Not yet. He's not dangerous. Well, rather, he's very dangerous, but not to me. He loves me. That's part of the problem. You know I love you. And we'll be together.
And now is just the absolute worst time to try and listen to this recording. I can barely hear it amongst all the other noise.
Probably got you pegged already, and that's fine. But that's also why I can't tell you where I am right now. And she can't know either. She must never know that me and him are connected. So please don't say anything. Just stay safe. We'll see each other again soon.
And that's Paths Diverged 4. I want to check. Ooh, look at this map. Interesting. Do we even have other paths diverged? Or did we just get 4 Hmm. Hmm. So you have draw distance issues, certainly, and they're hiding it in the sky fog. Although maybe that's not even an engine issue as much as this is just the scene they wanted to show. But it would have to make a lot of sense to say there is fog. And certainly you could have said there was fog and then used your... Here's yet another texture for a ladder to climb up. They could have said that your beat link, like augmented graphics, was filtering out the fog, and then just whenever the beat link, oops, didn't hit the button fast enough apparently. Like whenever the beat link went offline or the runner's vision went offline, you could see the world as it really is, and it would be a fairly interesting story certainly if you saw everything as bright and happy and colorful, and in reality it's actually very dirty and ugly. That would be more in line of another game that came out probably a few years after this game came out, We Happy Few. In We Happy Few, people were drugged and seeing the world completely differently than from what it really was. I will say, on the other hand, though, this is a fairly bad way to present a building. We are just rushing through it because it's broken and because the game does not want us to have to spend potentially an extra 5 minutes, 20 minutes trying to get from the bottom to the top. Of course, you would have solved this fairly easily also if you had just given an elevator ride all the way to the top, or used a VTOL or drone to get to the top. All I'm doing is using the mag rope here over and over again, which is not really parkouring. The game has forgotten the whole idea of what the gameplay mechanic was for this game. And it does feel like a few things are breaking, but not the things you're actually standing on or touching. Yeah, and that definitely feels scripted as things are breaking. They've already let Faith lose as a character once. It really wouldn't be a very good hero's journey if she just felt her death or broke her legs or something now. It's so odd that this game doesn't have a run button. Like, most games don't need a run button because you should just always be running. And in this case, that is also the scenario, I think, but... I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing there. Am I supposed to be falling? No, I guess I was supposed to turn around, wall run, and jump, which that gimmick sucks. I wish there was there was an improvement on that movement technology. Part of the problem certainly here is that when YouTube was fairly new, parkour videos were a big thing for a while there, but parkour in itself, on top of often being incredibly dangerous, really can't evolve that much. There's only so many different tricks you can think of that are new. I guess we're going forward and not to the side. Doing this incredibly crazy wall rope walk.
Hey, you guys. Whoa. There's a huge hole in the wall here.
The explosion tore off one of the rotor blades. You might need the mag to keep going.
What's funny is we got a mirror reflection there, but they also just showed me a collectible.
But see if you can find another route in the meantime.
Like, how in the world am I even supposed to come down here and collect this? That's one of 2 secret bags. I seriously doubt I would want to actually go through the sequence a second time just to find the collectible. So Sky City is where the Conglomerate Council meets. Which, okay. It's kind of fancier than other places we've seen, but not even that fancy. Not really super surprising stuff here. Nice little holograms over the elevators. That's something that should have probably been a consistent thing throughout the entire game. Now runner's vision is offline, so the...
Oh, whoa. Plastic! I need those doors open! Now!
I'm doing my best.
There's K-Sec everywhere!
I said I'm doing my best.
Now I can get the runner's vision online. Okay. That was a massive amount of K-Sec. There's really no way you would have survived that.
Kuma's cheering you.
That being said, it doesn't seem like my climbing here is preventing them from shooting at me.
I too am tracking your progress with great interest. And then another offer for you. Destroy reflection, and I will give you the drawing. I consider canceling your debt, but then you'd have no reason to come visit.
What drawing?
You know, a position which Faith has been craving for some time. I'll let her tell you about it.
Yeah, it feels like we're going to get the credits and then Faith is going to talk about the drawing in the credits. Yeah, I have no idea if there were just a bunch of Krugersec standing in open elevator doors shooting at me, or if it just happened to be that they could aim at a very sharp angle and shoot me.
We're not even sure he's in the building. Could be he evacuated just in case.
Okay. Do we jump up here?
I've reached the top.
This definitely feels like where a boss fight could happen.
That's it, I give in. You are the better runner, Faith.
Here's your secret. The console you want should be in the command center just below you.
Like the first game ended this way on a helipad.
Don't you like it?
So you have to just sit here and listen to the recording. And the visuals here are nowhere as good as they were halfway up. If anything, all this really goes to show you is that they didn't really animate or render anything outside of Glass City. Honestly, I feel like this story only succeeds in a happy ending if we find out Kruger does kill with reflection all of the members of the conglomerate, and if not most of the high cast in general, and then we defeat and kill Kruger. Well, thank goodness I found them both. That way there's not an established person in power or organization in power. Interesting water on top of glass. Because if I am just gonna like expose the actions of Kruger or defeat Kruger, the conglomerate will just like do a 180 on him and betray him and blame everything on him and still be in power.
I'm here.
We need somebody like Rebecca to
That's it.
add some
Connect the Omni-Stat
outside
drive and
pressure
the virus will do the rest.
against the
And you should probably
conglomerate, and
expect
she'd
the
have to
guards
be a
show
lot
up any
more
minute.
effective than just blowing up a few buildings. Because Rebecca's not, as a terrorist, she's not really being particularly effective right now. Like, it doesn't feel like her blowing up this place is going to lead to a large percentage of the population being sympathetic or siding with the Black November factions. See, far back here you can see there is some other buildings in another part of the city or another city, potentially side by side. But when you look in the far distance, you're basically seeing fog and mountains, which really once again reinforces the idea that Glass City might just be floating in the middle of the ocean, and there might not be any other cities or land masses anywhere around here. We're back to seeing the reflection logos. And I assume we blow this up and we hack reflection, and if we succeed at the hacking, then we're going to possibly get shot down here and then have to run out that way or run through there. Yeah, you can see there's a map of a world, but the map doesn't make the most amount of sense. Seeing just like grids and elevations, and that's about it. Yeah, it's like there's just a small segment, these small squares being shown on this hologram, and that may be Glass City, and the rest of this may be what the world looks like or what the general region looks like. There's nobody here. It would make a lot of sense for there to be somebody in the chairs not paying attention. It's also kind of interesting that you have a keyboard terminal here when they haven't bothered to render that before, or really focus on showing that before.
As I suspected. What do you hope to accomplish here?
I'm giving people the right to decide things for themselves.
Oh, Faith, hasn't it ever occurred to you that people might want reflection?
They just want the pretty lie you're giving them, not the ugly truth.
Oh, yes, the truth is always ugly, isn't it? As you should know.
Two sentinels. Apparently I'm gonna have to fight here.
She never wanted this. You perverted everything she ever stood for.
What do you know of her reasons? You were a child. You're still a child. Wantingly destroying everything around you. I promised your sister that I would capture you alive. Submit and you won't be harmed.
Never.
So final boss fight seems to be like they're gonna say the same thing as usual. And it doesn't really feel like there's a lot of places you can run around here. Best case scenario would be to knock these two into each other. And that's just not gonna likely happen. Alright, let's see. Everything's locked around. There seems to me like there's more than two people here. Yeah. Yeah. How can the indicator really makes it feel like there's 4 or 5 enemies around the area, but visually I'm only seeing 2 sentinels. Remember, there is literally a scenario here where the game would have only given you 1 or 2 health staminas by default, and you wouldn't have upgraded anywhere past that. And clearly I haven't learned something. Like, I'm not really trying to sidestep stuff with the left trigger, and like we could try that and see if that works. It starts you with a single disrupt, but you have to be mostly standing on your feet to use the disrupt. It means you can't really do it. There's nothing around here to run around the wall and punch and jump. Like, best case scenario, you do this, that, and then that, and then that, and then you try to position yourself in such a way so that he can't hit you. Maybe you can run this way and do something like that. I got one down. Let's see if we can run around a little bit more and build up that shield. Like, he's not even near me. If I can get one good hit on him, maybe 2, I can take him out. My hope is that that's the end of fighting for this entire game, because it's been a terrible system. This virus is loading very slowly.
Damn runt. I should have had you killed with your leech parents.
You've lost Kruger. Your control ends here.
Reflection is not about control. It's about survival.
For you and the other families, maybe. It's time you all withered and died.
And they're not even gonna have us fight him, which is fine. I'm more than happy to just watch a cutscene with an old man getting beaten up.
Dooming your dear sister as well.
I'm setting her free.
Hardly. Isabel has a chronic lung condition. With Reflection, we've managed to keep it at bay. Destroy
You're
it.
lying.
Am I? Am I lying? You almost managed to kill her once. Why not just go finish the job?
Back!
Everyone around you dies, Faith. did it ever occur to you that maybe you're the one to blame?
You killed my family. You killed my friends. And you killed Noah.
I don't really care if she kills him. She's been killing people this whole time, knocking them off buildings.
What the hell are you waiting for? Stop that thing and kill her!
Honestly, I don't care if you even if she kills her sister. Like, so we're just gonna chase after her sister, which is fine, but it really is the needs of the few versus the needs of the many. Did she really slide this way? Like, why would your sister ever do anything so crazy as that? Not being a runner. Yeah, and this is mostly just a cutscene. By all means, like, if you have to sacrifice your sister to stop the end of free will in all of Glass City, do it.
Stop it! I hate you!
This feels like this would have been in the teaser for this game to show them fighting each other instead of being very friendly with each other as in the original game. I guess we did get shown at the very beginning of the game that she was a bodyguard and very powerful as far as punching and kicking, but I don't know if that translates to running and sliding.
He said you died in the riots with Mom and Dad. I cried for months. And then I convinced myself that you never existed. It was the only way.
Ironically here, this is giving more characterization to the sister than it is to Faith.
He killed our parents. I saw it. And he's killed hundreds more for the sake of reflection.
Isabel! Come! We're leaving!
You don't have to do what he says, Kat. You are your own person.
This has gone on long enough! Fire!
No!
This is gonna be like a 4 or 5 minute cutscene to wrap up. And anytime you see such a long cutscene at the end of a game, you know they've dropped the ball as far as the gameplay mechanic being important.
Don't understand. I have to.
This would be funny if she had just let her fall, and then the prequel actually was that Isabel / Kat is the Faith of the original game, and she just changed her appearance to honor her after letting her die and regretting it. And then the sister in the original game would be some third sister.
And that's how it all went down. I wish I could say everything changed. That the employees rose up in disgust over reflection and overthrew the conglomerate. But there was no mass uprising. No riots on the streets. Kruger's sect remained in control. Life went on as before. Or almost. Because something had changed. We'd started something. Something we intend to finish.
There's really no way, though, you would be satisfied with that ending. having just played this game, or having played the original Mirror's Edge and then felt like this was a coherent prequel to that original game. Gameplay wise, it's going to be a completely different experience. If I were to go and play the original Mirror's Edge now, it would be much shorter, much more simplistic. There would be this odd lack of having the mag grapple and the extra features, an odd lack of an open world, an odd lack of collectibles. It really just doesn't make a lot of sense. It would have made way more sense to make a sequel to Mirror's Edge and just go to a different city and fight a different country, as it were. Inherently, what this says is that you have to just put a whole bunch of KY jelly over your memories to fuzzy them up. This is an odd imagery I'm using here, to make you vaguely remember the first game as a retconned story that matches up with this second game. And that just doesn't work. If they were to announce Mirror's Edge 3 tomorrow, after playing this, I would not have much interest in playing Mirror's Edge 3. They've thrown everything, including the kitchen sink, at this game, and it just doesn't make sense. And perhaps that's a great argument for something like Assassin's Creed, where if Assassin's Creed existed but it didn't have the assassination and the crazy sci-fi political intrigue story, it almost certainly would fail. Which is odd, because in 2022, Assassin's Creed mostly has gotten rid of the crazy sci-fi aliens storyline concepts. The whole Apple of Eden was a big focus in the very first Assassin's Creed game, and I don't think there are many allusions to that at all. And the modern Assassin's Creed games are big open world games as service experiences. And honestly, I don't think they're as good as because of it. But if you were playing an Assassin's Creed game with no assassination, or very poor gameplay mechanics around the assassinations, that would be a problem. And that's kind of what this is one thing I think to mention here, it looks like there not very many people worked on this game, and I imagine this was kind of the end cap of EA actually trying to make games. Like, EA makes their EA Sports games, and every year those tend to be, at best, acceptable, at worst, absolutely full of bugs and garbage. But I don't think EA has put out more than maybe half a dozen games since this has come out that weren't sports related. It's funny how the camera is all tilted. Oops. Apparently hitting the controller does not move the camera. Well, hitting the right stick moves the camera. But hitting the left stick apparently skips the credits higher up. They're trying to show off the city, and they're doing a terrible job of even showing off the city, because it is just this blurred, fogged out whiteness. There's no color that you actually would see. None of the billboards moving. It's a depiction of what the map looks like, not what the actual city looks like. But one of the things that Assassin's Creed 1 introduced, and Assassin's Creed 1 would have definitely been out before this game started development, was the idea of just making almost every surface element potentially climbable. They had programmed in algorithms to say, if this is a ledge and it has a certain depth on it where it is reasonable that somebody could put their fingers on that ledge and climb up like they were mountain climbing, then they could actually climb that. And then they were procedurally maybe not so procedurally, maybe by hand, labeling certain rings on the sides of buildings that are decorative, or certain window seals, or just holes in the walls as things that they wanted you to be able to climb, and then building the buildings as having those elements on at least 3, usually 4 sides of every building. So there's a lot in Assassin's Creed where you just go and see something that looks like you can climb it, and you climb it, and there is way more stuff to climb. There's really none of that in Mirror's Edge Catalyst. There's very distinctly either nothing on the wall or very little on the wall visually, and you can't climb any of it, or there is a point where you can climb. And I keep saying climbing because that's what this game is mostly missing, is a way to get up. There's plenty of ways to fall to your death, plenty of ways to fall and stumble, or fall and roll. There's plenty of ways to jump, and the one wall run exists. Arguably, there should be like a wall kick that just kicks on the wall and does a 180. There should be potentially a couple of different ways in which a wall run actually animates and works. But there's no way to get up other than climbing on the red pipes, which is slow, or you climb on ladders, which is slow. But you usually aren't even going up ladders or red pipes in the actual game. Yeah. Back to the story, it absolutely sucked. But I don't... Like, you can't forget that there was... that Faith's sister was just a low-level cop. Like, a nobody cop in the first game. She can't go from being Isabel Kruger, the daughter of Kruger, to a low-level cop if this is supposed to be the prequel. It just doesn't make any sense at all. Plus, you already, like, it would have totally changed the story and how things went in total as far as the experience. They should have just said this was they should have just given this a satisfactory ending and said this was an alternate universe telling, a retelling, a retcon, that's what it is, of the original game. Where you end up fighting Kruger and defeating him. They honestly must have thought, or they must have just hoped. Honestly, I'm not sure if game producers hope more than think that when they're trying to get a sequel. Yeah, I would say here this is probably more of a prayer and a hope for a sequel in this ending compared to what it should have been. Yeah. Let's see if we can just skip this with the B button. This is going too long.
The successor to Gabriel Kruger, head of KrugerSec and missing since the terrible events in Glass recently. Kruger will be superseded by his daughter, Isabel, who, while still mourning her
Well, I have to go.
claims to be excited by the
Your sister's the new head of KrugerSec. Interesting. Plastic made a breakthrough with Kuma. I'm off.
for the failed reflection launch and promised a full investigation into what happened. Millions of
I am sure glad to be rid of that crap. That's one I owe you forever, Faith.
So does she have the tattoo now? Yes.
I'm gonna run.
I guess I would heavily indicate that there is a foreign movie called Run Lola Run that probably was inspirational to to the original Mirror's Edge, and I'd say check that out. Although it doesn't really have any parkour elements to it. Creepy statue. So what we're seeing here is that the layer is somewhat fixed up here, but not full of people. Instead, it's full of like creepy statues, which just makes the whole thing a little spooky.
So Isabel Kruger is really your sister? Mind blown.
Yeah, and just a random line of dialogue here. Okay. So, I think what is fair to check. They totally forgot about Rebecca in Black November as being an element. Your sister is now the new bad guy. What I think is fair to check here. So we'll set this here. And we'll see if we can run into a camera and see if that will call Kruger Sec. Or are we just now safe? Boy, is she in darkness. I feel like the lighting is just broken on that texture. Or maybe that is actually intentional, that to make the character a little bit more in shadow since we've already done the race with him. The other thing we should check is, yes, all of the grid links are now visible. So, map, right stick, everything is enabled. So, let's see. This is the dot, I guess. This just yellow dot is a grid link. And that's a grid link, and that's a grid link, and that's a grid link, and that's a grid link. So I could theoretically try and go get all of those. We could try and figure out, like, I got 1 star on this run. But I feel like, really, alright, we're 100% done with the story, so we do know. But there's no easy way, I think, to go back and play the story from that interface, maybe from another interface. So if I right stick here, and I said turn off dashes, then that probably gives us a slightly more reasonable list of quests to do if I wanted to do them. But what would have been in that ending to really want me to do that? And as we get further into regions we didn't spend a lot of time in, ones that are more on the edge of the cities, that is going to definitely become more of a hassle. I can say there's about 15 achievements on Steam that I haven't collected, and I almost certainly would have to do all the dashes once at minimum to get all of those achievements, and I don't really want to involve myself in that. Turning them off on the map does not make them disappear completely. Right, so here's a camera. If nothing changed, then this should cause them to appear. Yep. Yeah, this is so GTA around what it's trying to do. It's trying to have a whole star rating and a Grand Theft Auto experience. These chips, and interesting, the numbers were not blinking there. Yep. This will give us some more emblems, some runner tag backgrounds. Yeah, the only other thing to question here would be, can we fast travel somewhere? Nope, you can't fast travel when there's a KSEC alert. So you can set my destination there and try and escape. Yeah, so you're not going to get a peaceful experience. Not 100% peaceful. Yeah. So the only other thing that you might hope for is that there would just be less let's see, that delivery mission is one I don't think we've ever done, so you can't do it while the Kruger sec is still happening. Get out of sight. So what I need to do as one last experiment, if there was going to be any hope, which there really isn't a lot of hope, like, if there's going to be any hope whatsoever to want just hide under the stairs, there should have been more sections like this where you could just hide. It would be, could I wander around an area and avoid the cameras and still try to go for things? I assume I already hacked that billboard. It would really only be a slight difference though if all the cameras were disarmed. A very, very slight difference. If there was just no security people around otherwise. So, and I can hear Kruger sec just came out of the door. They can't see me at the moment, so I could hide up here for a while. But I don't think I can hide up here for long enough. I don't think I can jump that direction. There we had a little bit of a hitch. I did manage to go a full episode without seeing any hitching. And I think I would lean towards blaming this game for having hitching than immediately suspecting my computer of having problems. Hmm. Hmm. I need to get down lower because I see that there is a grid leak there. But I'm not going to get all the grid leaks anyways. Look, there. Somebody just called me out. Just heard somebody say, "You're Faith Connors, aren't you?" Hmm. Yeah, there's grid leaks all over the place. There's cameras all over the place. And there's still security people all over the place. Apparently there's a grid leak somewhere around here. Hmm. But it would be kind of a nightmare to try and collect everything. We'd have to run into these kinds of markers and we would need a guide. I would just have to straight up look up online where every single secret bag and recording is and just have a printed out map and a checklist to figure it out. I may have already been up here and collected this. Nope, apparently not. I don't think that quite worked, but still ended up getting the secret bag. And then there's not really a great way to get down, is there? Yeah. There's no logic here. Is there a way down? Seriously. Maybe I'm supposed to wall run to this. And then... yeah. And Kruger seemingly just died from old age. Or is just being replaced by the daughter. Maybe he didn't even die. No, they said he specifically died, so they're killing him off. Which, once again, is totally out of line with the story in the first game. So this can't really be a prequel. It would be funny if they had gone with a full, like, Bioshock Infinite style alternate universe concept, and that this was just a different Mirror's Edge in an alternate universe. That was awkward, to say the least. You're just not going to be fast enough. Alright. So I could easily spend like another 5 to 10 hours running around, marking things on the map to find where a specific grid leak is, to get all of them, and clear off the map that way. I could try and get all these advanced kits and main kits to then customize my character, which would require me to go to EA Origin, and I have no interest in doing that. I could try and do all these delivery missions and struggle with each mission. Almost certainly it would take me 2 or 3 attempts. But it really is just all for nothing. That there's, other than achievements, there's no reason why you would want to engage with doing all of this content. If you were going to engage with it, you would have done it while you were playing the main game, and the main story would have had to have been good enough, and the world design would have had to have been good enough to keep you wanting to play this. I almost wonder if a mobile version of a Mirror's Edge game might work, where it has a daily amount of races you can do, and you come back every day, and there's a cooldown timer. If you were going to throw this much content at it, that might make sense. But the thing that really, really kills that idea more than anything, because I could see some players wanting to go for that and really wanting to just 100% this game. That's not uncommon. What kills the idea is the fact that there's just no peaceful mode to this at all. So you're on top of trying to do the runs and races and deliveries and getting the grid links. You're also going to be chased by Kruger Sack for no reason. Most players almost certainly would have already gotten all the XP needed to unlock everything. And frankly, if I had unlocked all the skills and gotten all the XP, again, there's an argument for a peaceful mode, that there should be some option to that. The security hubs, the grid nodes, are a reasonable amount at less than 10. Even the billboard hacks alone would be reasonable. The opportunity missions, not really that reasonable. In fact, it's very questionable where all of them are. Apparently there's 32 opportunity missions. It does not feel for a second like there are 32 opportunity missions being displayed on the game map right now. So it may just be a case that right now there's a handful of opportunity missions you can do, and then you would have to load into a previous section to see more. The amount of surveillance recordings is almost reasonable, but they're not marked on the map. I think most of them are probably, most of the remaining ones are probably in stories. There's way too many documents, way too many secret bags, way too many electronic parts. It seems like there's no reason for the electronic parts to even exist. If you had eliminated secret bags and electronic parts, you would have gotten rid of 290 collectibles in the game and made it much, much more reasonable. You could have put the secret bags as a visual, as just a different form of documents. And you probably couldn't get rid of the opportunity missions, unfortunately, so you would want to keep them. You could definitely cut the amount of grid leaks down to almost zero, and it wouldn't change too much. If grid leaks were simply just something that gave you XP, and they were always infinitely spawning and respawning, that would be a way of keeping players happy to find them, but not really under the burden to try and collect them all. Let's see. Clearly, there is at least a third, probably a fourth or fifth row of these different echoes, but the echoes don't matter because they're only really shown to other players. As far as movement technology, I would have liked to see a lot more improvement, a lot more new stuff. Remember, I never even used coil once in the whole game. And you absolutely had to use coil in the first game. There was definitely a point early on where you couldn't succeed without it. Almost every time I fought, I was using a heavy attack. I was, maybe I would have been slightly better if I had tried some light attacks also, but no. Increasing my stamina was absolutely necessary, and increasing my health, and still I struggled. most of the time, fighting sentinels. You could have easily eliminated sentinels from the game. That would have been for the better. I didn't even realize that this upgrade was something that the game just didn't give me. It may have given me that. The magro pull down was a good addition as an item. It was pretty much the only good addition. The disrupt instead of guns, though, is not a great addition, particularly when you were supposed to be using it this whole time to break cameras throughout the entire city. And see, if this was more of a real World of Warcraft style MMO game, then I could potentially see a lot of players, like massive multiplayer online, playing at the same time and hanging out with your friends and just grinding through races with your friends. That might make some sense if this game was trying to be something closer to like a massively multiplayer Mario Kart type experience. But I don't think that's really how this ever would have played out. You would have probably had at most 10 or 20 people in the same instance of the world at the same time. And the world would get very full very fast. A lot of this feels like the ambition of the Uru game from the creators of Myst, that was, they tried to make that way too early. They were a decade or two too early for something like that. So it's not super surprising that Uru failed. And in a lot of ways, Uru had things like grid leaks, and that was about the only thing it had. It didn't really have a lot of races. Right. I'm wondering if there is a way to go, say, to old friends and replay that and get into the overworld. So let's try that. Because if we went back to this really early section, then you might get that peaceful mode where the cameras aren't going to try and kill you. But I also wouldn't be surprised if this is going to just force you into a story mode. There was some weirdness in the prompts of story modes too, because you would often...
Great. The next relay box should be closed.
Yeah. So we have collectibles here.
Should warn you, Faith.
Yeah. So this is starting us...
There are more Kasich patrols lately, and they look like they mean business too, not the usual goons.
Okay. So... yeah, scanning grid clear. So we are in a slightly safer mode here. And maybe I can get something. I suppose it's worth mentioning that in the first game there were air conditioner vents that weren't too different from this, and those were the safe havens in the first game. Right. Okay. So this whole time, I was supposed to be doing something like that. And I would assume that that would save us. So, what I can do here is have the grid map on. I could go and look for any quests. But it doesn't seem like there are any quests here. So that would give you some safety, I suppose. to potentially go and visit an area that normally would have cameras going off. But it wouldn't be this one, though. It would have to be something later. So I'd have to come over here, abort the mission, load back in, and then try and load into a different section. And it may just be the case that loading back into an area is going to take way too long. Yeah, Be Like Water is probably the only opportunity though, because the cameras start detecting you after that quest, and you even here. So there may not be a real scenario where you could jump back.
Where's the dead drop?
Slight change of plans. They want to use another dead drop nearby, and there's a bunch of KSEC patrols between you and there. Probably responding to the commotion from before.
Oh, and you cannot go. Alright. Yep. So it doesn't work. It 100% does not work. You cannot replay one of the early sections and then just wander around in the map and do them. You're going to constantly have KrugerSec harass you whether you want it or not. Best case scenario, from the beginning of the game, you were destroying the cameras so that less cameras would detect you, but for a lot of players that would have just never really occurred to them, and so you are going to have this nightmare scenario. Alright, so let me just ask, can I go to the menu? If I go here, we have options, gameplay, Runner's Vision full, classic off. I wonder what classic really would have been. Full wasn't even that good, so let's see, subtitles, user generated content. Yes, let's do that. Let's see what user generated content looks like. Other stuff. Yeah. Okay. We start to see user generated content. That should be quite a bit. But it may just be user generated content. Yeah. Not really seeing anything so far. Let's take this out. I know we're going long today, but I'm bending over backwards to try and give this a chance to have some way of being playable. This is in the exact same place as the other one was. Just die. Alright, so we need to look and see if we can find some user-generated content. Here we go. Let's teleport to this race, and we'll see what a random user-generated content race looks like. Let's see. And go. This looks nicer as content. Why did we not experience any of this in the actual game with those circles and with a time trial? Like, this is a whole region and a path that I've just never even taken in the main game. Clearly, they're super lazy. Like, they did not really try here to make a experience that that would have pointed you towards even the grid leaks. Did that reset me completely? Or is that just I was supposed to land here and then hit that? See, I just got an achievement for doing user-generated content. You can see here that I am in 27th space, which is to say that more than likely 28 people in total have done that content. And yeah, that definitely does not show a real thriving multiplayer game. There's just not enough people for that to make sense. And it, I guess, would just be a question as to how many user-generated content gets loaded in at once. It seems to me like they're picking maybe 10 or 20 things and that's it. As a beat LE, which I don't know if there's much difference between a beat LE and a time trial, other than maybe the time trials point you in specific directions, where beat LEs just have a start and an end, or more of a linear experience. Yep. But the map is hardly crawling with this kind of content. I wouldn't be surprised if a beat LE is literally just like a grid link, or a small selection of grid leaks. And then he's got a race way over here in the corner where there's nothing else. Yeah, if you were absolutely desperate for more content, this is a system that would give you more content without having to install a mod. I'll grant you that, but it probably was not a system worth developing for 30 or 40 people to really engage with it. I bet it's probably closer to 30 or 40,000 people, but even that is not enough of a player base. Right. If I was going to create a beat LE, place beat LE, Save and publish as BeatLE. Is the BeatLE really just a... Can't place a BeatLE here, it's too close to other content. Which is inherently, that means there will be a limitation. That we had already collected that one. Right. Too close to other content, too close to other content. Too close to other content. Where can you place a BeatLE then? They may be testing every single square inch. And every single square inch may already be taken up. It very well could have just been a land grab. And there may not be anywhere so you can place one. And if there was an achievement around creating a BeatLE,
Nearby, delivery pickup available.
like, it's checking. Let's see. But it's not finding any locations. It seems like your feet have to kind of be on the ground. In a game like this, where you would be running around a lot, you probably wouldn't load in fast enough. So you probably would have to walk around fairly slowly to see if you can find a place to put a BeatLE. It really feels like there's no attempt here to allow for any redundancy. Either the game is glitched or the land grab is real. Right, let's try this again. BeatLE. Too close to other content. Inherently, wouldn't the whole game just be full of content? Wouldn't that be your desire? To have a game that is full of content? So that you couldn't place BeatLEs anywhere? Yeah. It seems like what's happened. Now it's questionable whether it's happened because of other players making content, or whether it's happened just because they actually did put enough of a up. Right. So it probably makes a lot of sense why some of those races and BeatLEs are way in the corner of the map, because you can't make a BeatLE yourself otherwise. Like, I've tried to engage on this game in everything it is offered. I've bent over backwards. And it's just not going to accommodate me. Finally. Save and publish. Touch to beat LE. And that gave me nothing. Gave me an achievement. But that's it. So it's just a thing. It's just a thing on the map. It's not a time trial. It's not anything like that. Alright. So I'm exiting out the game completely. And I'm going to relaunch it. And then that's going to be the end of the series. Let's see. And hopefully nothing crashes. Let's see. Exit game, confirm. Because of Origin being a middleman launcher on Steam. It's taking forever. Come on, Steam. Recognize that Origin is now closed. Well, this is taking forever. Okay, the Origin crashed my computer, and looking online, it definitely seems like there have been cases in the past where exiting out has caused Origin to crash computers. So I'm not really even leaning again towards it being an issue with my computer, but it is doing something fairly nasty, corrupting data files. So like I'm gonna have to just like uninstall Origin after this. But suffice it to say, that took 20 minutes to reboot and actually get it. For a second there, I thought I may very well need to reinstall Windows, and I probably do need to take a moment and reinstall Windows from scratch on my computer. It's been probably too long, but I don't definitely want to be forced into it because of a terrible software like Origin. Suffice it to say, there is just a resume game option here that gets you to this point. So unless I was going to try and make a new game, which would erase your save file and start the game over, there is no other way to load in, and there's no way to run around this whole environment. Is this a hacked billboard, or is this just the default advertisement for a billboard? No, that's just a default advertisement for Reflection, and we just never even saw it. Like, half the loading screens could have been these commercials, certainly, as we look at the loading screens. Anyways, yeah, this game fails. It failed miserably to be a good game that I wanted to play. It failed miserably by the end to be a successor to Mirror's Edge, the original Mirror's Edge. It fails miserably to make me want to play the remaining content, and it fails miserably to make me want to play the extra content added by other players, like the online content. It's just overall a worse experience, worse story. The story is awful in the way it ends, and it was pretty terrible even throughout. And I could certainly continue to go a lot more negative, but there's really no need to go further in that way. That's going to be it for Mirror's Edge Catalyst. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. That's a great way to get backup notifications of when videos are available, since YouTube is terrible at that. Even if you do subscribe and click the notification bell, it's still pretty terrible about actually notifying people when new videos come out. For instance, I live stream every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and every weekday there's at least 2 series that air of pre-recorded footage. Furthermore, there is a playlist tab on YouTube that has a playlist for every game I've ever covered, and I've covered a lot, so check that out if that interests you. And then if you really want to support me, down below in the description near the bottom there's a link to Patreon. If Patreon is set up correctly this week, you can support me that way, or you could always friend me on Steam and just gift me a gift card or a game off my wish list, or just any game you'd like to see me cover, and I'll definitely consider it. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.